For fuck's sake.
For fuck's sake.
Fuck's sake!
Get the flick out of here. Get the flick out of here. Thank you, my contributors to that little intro. Phil, my classmate from Harvey Mudd College, and Pete and Mark and Brian from the Intel days. And thank you most definitely to my good friend Dan Gunn, presently in China, for whipping up a little riff. I took a little bit of part of it. We'll hear the whole thing at some point, somewhere, this show or somewhere else. Welcome to my first, or what I'm calling show 0 of my new show, FFS. You probably have figured out what that means by now. I'm going with FFStalk in the social media circles to differentiate, because FFS is a common, already taken name for things. I will apologize now for my voice, which is suffering with the Las Vegas allergy extended edition. Yes, I'm coming to you from Las Vegas, where I have lived for, I want to say 7.5 years. And the idea with the intro is I would like other people, a variety of people over time, to contribute in some way to the opening. Music, verbiage, exclamations of other sorts, and whatnot. Get the flick out of here was an expression an Irish bartender, a friend of mine, used to say, so sticking with the theme. So yeah, I'm gonna be enjoying some tea, and you'll probably be not enjoying my congestion, but I'll apologize now. So, the days of podcasting. I used to have a podcast network with a friend of mine, Kevin, co-founder. When I lived in Sunnyvale, California, it was called Radio Sunnyvale. We kicked that off because Sunnyvale, for being at the time and probably still one of the largest small cities on the peninsula in the Bay Area, in Silicon Valley, for being, at the time, I think it was like 120,000. Now I think it's more, although there may be an egress at this point in on December 9th, the day I'm recording this, 2020. At the time, though, there was, next to San Jose and San Francisco, the Sunnyvale was the largest city on the peninsula and was lacking any form of media, newspaper. The only newspaper, the name escapes me, the publisher, Paul Crono. I can't remember his first name. I'll find that eventually. He contacted me because the only local paper was actually published by his company, and the only reporter that really had the Sunnyvale beat didn't live in Sunnyvale. So we formed this local media startup, and we managed to be basically the only local source of anything. We would interview local business people, local government, local people in general. Had several shows. Actually reached the point where people would say, "Hey, are you Dan or Kevin?" when I was walking around with my microphone and my little Zoom recorder. So those are the good old days. Those shows are still, I found them recently. I think they're still up on an S3 Amazon block storage thing, or object storage. So maybe I'll try to clip some of those and see what happens. But anyway, that was then. That was back in 2009-ish. Maybe even later, 10. Anyway, so back then, I got into podcasting a little bit, and it was very interesting and still up and coming. And I actually, at the time, had listened to probably either the first or one of the first shows that Adam Curry had published. It was a very, very, very rough, very casual, no structure whatsoever. It was literally, I think it was him and some other person in a hotel room with a coat hanger, holding a microphone between them somehow. They just were talking about possibilities. And so the distance that podcasting has come. I'm not a fan of the term podcasting because it's sort of a throwback. It'd be like why not just say 8-track casting, right? So the iPod is no longer what it once was. Everybody has a phone that plays MP3 files. And even if you have a dedicated MP3 player, probably, well, the newer stuff is not an iPod. So I think podcasting is a bit of a throwback. Anyway, that's another discussion. So here I am back at this. So far, so good. This is the second show I'm recording this week. My mom and I have a show. And before you roll your eyes, my mom has been podcasting for years and continues to. My mom had a cell phone when you had to bolt them into a car with a little curly pigtail antenna on the rear window. She's more of a nerd than she will let on. She has a better Zoom recorder than I do. So we actually have a show to, in these pandemic times, we figured, hey, we keep talking on the phone about various things, which I will get to, and why not make a show out of it? So we kicked off the first episode of Hugo Floss, which is, yes, a play on the string that you use to clean your teeth. And that show published it yesterday, December 8th. I'm sure I will refer to and link to that in the appropriate places. So, I should point out that the people that recorded my intro, I put a call out on Facebook for anyone in their best real or fake Irish accent to say FFS and whatever they thought it might mean. There are versions where you can say feck, for example, or flick even. That was just about 1 month ago, yesterday. So today's December 9th. And I was thinking, man, I should start my show. These people took the time to make their exclamations. And what has happened since then? Let us review. Just a couple of things off the top of my head. We had the election. We had and continue to have the aftermath of the election. And by the way, I don't really want to get too political, so I don't intend to get political, but I have no qualms about talking or discussing, more likely, government, economics, and so on. But so we had the election. Right around the same time, my dad was in the hospital for another surgery, which went well. So happy ending there. And actually, it's proving to be a rather dramatic improvement. It's been about 18 months of interesting experience that my mom and I will almost certainly discuss on the other show, but that I will talk about here in the context of the larger arc, which I'm about to get to. Don't worry. Hang on. So, election, dad in the hospital. My mom was almost had an exposure scare, so went through a COVID testing process, 2-hour wait, Sophia antigen test and a PCR test. Only got the results of the PCR test, so that was a little frustrating. They're in Phoenix, Arizona. I have not tried to get tests. I just avoid people, so I'm completely quarantining myself aside from an occasional visit to the local grocery store. But yeah, so there is a little pandemic going on, and we're in the next wave. And I mentioned I'm in Las Vegas, which is enjoying all of the benefits of, as Penn Jillette would say, a city built on the inability of people to do math. So one can only imagine the low test ratio to population ratio. We have, Las Vegas has approximately 60-ish% of the state population, but has only accomplished 22% of the overall statewide testing, according to the news yesterday on December 8th, which means that even though Clark County, where Las Vegas is, has a substantial fraction of the positive cases or test results cases, we have been under testing based on population distribution. So who knows, but we are experiencing another wave of test positivity, something over 20%. And again, that's probably misleadingly okay. It could be much worse. I think it probably is. Anyway, so we have this little pandemic going on, and we are certainly, although if you're a tourist and you want to visit Vegas, by all means, come by. So pandemic, I've had a lot of projects that I'm trying to get going, which we will talk about as well. In fact, that's one of the major topics or themes even of this entire production. And as I'm sure everyone has heard by now, over the Thanksgiving weekend, I think it was Friday morning, Tony Hsieh succumbed to smoke inhalation, lung damage that he sustained in a house fire. I believe it was in Connecticut on November 18th, I think it was. So almost 10 days, nine and some partial days after a house fire. And so more details are coming out and all that. I'm not going to harp on that. Although certainly the Vegas downtown project is something that I would have talked about anyway, and I still intend to. But I want to make sure that the two topics are separate. So one, Tony Hsieh, the person; the other and more likely discussion topic is the way a startup city as a startup, I think, is the actual wording. The way that can be executed and the way it wasn't, in my opinion. But that is a completely separate matter, not directly related to the person. So it won't be possibly an attack on an individual, but more a discussion about, or what I would like to call in general, a failure analysis of, what happened, what didn't happen, what could have gone better, what didn't go well. And I'm really hoping with all of the topics I discussed to have other people. I hope you don't only listen to me rambling on about these things. So I'm going to have a sip of tea here, so bear with me. So yes, Tony Hsieh, very unfortunate. Some people know that I moved to Las Vegas after I had a house fire. Very clearly a different scenario. But from the first moment that I saw that he had passed away from, related to a house fire, kind of piqued my I won't say my interest, but certainly got my attention. Very, very sad. And, I was nowhere near a life-threatening situation in the scenario I went through. But just the recollection of seeing the fire outside. When I went outside, there's a wall of fire here. So yeah, that sort of hit home a little bit. But and then a lot of Tony. I didn't know Tony at all, even though when I moved here, I started getting to know a lot of people in Las Vegas. And in fact, I had done the Radio Sunnyvale production, had the house fire, moved to Las Vegas in July, August timeframe, 2013. And then I started attending the Downtown podcast, which was actually a video podcast. However, those are labeled nowadays. So the Downtown podcast, and it was right at the beginning of the Downtown project really ramping up severely. So I first saw it online. I said, oh, Downtown podcast, what is this? Oh, okay. Oh, I can just go and sit in the audience, and wow, okay. So I went, and Susan Hinton and Dylan Jorgensen were the hosts, and they had guests on, and they had an audience, and it turns out that all the people that were visiting downtown Las Vegas to see the Downtown project, that was basically one of the tour stops, and it was I believe it was on Wednesday nights, and so that's where I started going down there every Wednesday, and I had a great opportunity to run into a variety of people. And so I think this solo show probably interesting for some, maybe not for others. But the real value of that Downtown podcast was not only the interaction on the camera recorded during the show, but the audience, the discussions, the after say an after party, usually would end up eventually at the Gold Spike across the street. So you got to run into people from all over the country that were coming to town to see this endeavor. You got to run into your local friends, new local friends as they were moving into the city. I think it was we actually one night. I think in the very early days of the Downtown Podcast, we would go to, or they would go to La Costeña, which is a Mexican restaurant that was around the corner, behind Commonwealth, kind of behind, and around the corner. And that's where I ran into Maggie Shu when she first moved into the downtown area to start working for Downtown Project. I ran into a lot of people, luminaries, at the time or after. And Maggie was good friends with Tony, so I've seen her commenting on a lot of things. So again, that it kind of like reflecting on that time, and it's something that might come up again. But I do want to make sure that any discussions of the Downtown Project and what my views of it as an outside observer, since I was never directly involved, are not conflated with an opinion about Tony, since I did not know him. I only saw him. I had one probably 2-sentence conversation with him very briefly when I first started working for Intel. And that's about it. Saw him around, of course, a lot. And he was on the finale Downtown Podcast at the Inspire Theater. And I think I saw him around town now and then, but I never really had a conversation with him, so don't know him. I'm sure there will continue to be piles of articles and hours of discussion on Tony, what was going on, what may have been going on, how that impacted this or that. Don't know. I wouldn't mind having a discussion about that, perhaps with his friends, former colleagues, and whatnot. But I think it'll be that's a very personal thing. So I mean, much will be made of it, and I kind of disagree with that. Like let him rest in peace, because everybody types that. They type the rip and then they don't. So, but the project goes on. There are people that are continuing to. They work downtown in what is the remnants of the downtown. I can't remember what it's called now. Downtown properties or whatever it is. There are people that are still here. There are people that moved on, that took their companies and moved on, that shut down their company here and moved on to something else. Or there's a whole variety of avenues that people went down. And I got to know some of the people during that time. I read Amy Groth's Kingdom of Happiness, which was one person's view from her perspective inside for some part of the Downtown Project. I thought that was very interesting. It brought back a lot of memories about the discussions I had with people. And as an outsider, I was working at Intel for a couple of years of that. So when I was in town, I would go downtown. I would hang out at the social dinner type thing they had at Work in Progress. I think it was every Wednesday night also. So go down, have dinner, Downtown Podcast. So it was a nice little Wednesday. Over time, for Intel, I was more and more not around during the weekends. I would go off and do hackathons. I was in the Maker Innovator Group. By the way, that will come up again. I was in the Maker Innovator Group, so I would travel around the country a lot, basically Thursday to Monday, Friday to Monday, as a mentor for hackathon participants of all ages. This will come up quite a bit in the future, so I'll let that one go here. Anyway, so when I was in town, I would go downtown and catch up on the latest and see what was happening, and met a lot of people that were trying out ideas. And so the thing that will probably come up is the good news with Downtown Project was it was a place to try out ideas that probably wouldn't have gotten funded somewhere else. They would they have gotten the time of day from a Sandhill investor? Maybe not. Would they have gone further in a better or more structured or more experienced environment? Probably. So these are the kinds of things we'll talk about later. Anyway, so I was sorry to hear that, obviously, that Tony did not survive what I'm sure was a 10-day painful tragedy for him physically and for his family emotionally, mentally, and in any other way you can imagine. So we'll leave that there. That has been the last month or so. So now, why am I doing the show? Well, first of all, I wanted to get back into podcasting anyway because social media, especially Facebook, is getting to be quite frustrating. It's mostly sniping. Not mostly, but a lot. It's a lot of people that don't have discussions. They have drive-by comments. And then the nature of the news feed is such that you may never continue that conversation. You have to actually hunt it down, but you're getting pelted with all the other stuff. And so I think what we want to see as people is if we're going to discuss something, to actually discuss something. And that, Facebook groups, sure, they kind of have the same problem though. And then Twitter is kind of interesting again. I really became a Twitter fan when I was in the Bay Area, food truckery. So there wasn't a Facebook, certainly there wasn't Instagram. And so Twitter was the way food truck owners reached their customers to let them know where they were. So I have many, many tweets about food truck food and locations and events and whatnot. So yeah, I've been revisiting Twitter a little bit, but basically the thing that's I find very unsatisfying about social media is that it is either a platform for someone with a megaphone to shout their views, or more frequently their business pitches, like, hey, if you're looking for a house, a mortgage, some sort of homeopathic medicines, and so on and so on and so on. And ad placement. Instagram is now, it's the ads in the feed. I've trained it to show me a lot of coffee ads, so that's good. Coffee beans. So I can't argue with that too much. But so we've ceded control of our interactions with people to these platforms, which I'm not a fan of. So I'm hoping that this will be the first of several ideas to turn into productions, wherein I will share the mic, or the show at least, either as an audio show or possibly as a video stream of some kind with one or more other guests, and talk about various projects and ideas. And the idea that I want to pursue with this show, FFS, is typically something, an exclamation of frustration, which I've just expressed some of it with social media. But I believe the saying is, I can't remember what it is exactly. It's don't curse the darkness without bringing a flashlight. Is that what it is? So I would like to have discussion arcs, not just a single, 30-minute to however many hour discussion about a particular topic. I would really like to have like an ongoing set of topics, and see not only like, okay, where are the problems, but what can we do about it? What can I do? As Andy White, also of Downtown Project fame, once said to me, you have me, Dan, you have the advantage, or an advantage, in that if you have an idea, you actually have the skill set to make a solution. It was a night at the bunkhouse right before he was moving to San Diego. It was actually, I believe he was beginning his journey departing Las Vegas to travel and see multiple cities. And I think he went to San Diego and basically stopped there and began or relaunched his notion of a city as a startup, and the entrepreneurial incubation accelerator environment that he is a proponent of. So anyway, I still keep that with me. I don't move nearly fast enough as a solopreneur, as some people would say. But I think sharing ideas and talking about them is one way to kind of keep them on the front burner so they don't settle back. And this show is an example. It's something I wanted to start to jump back into this entire world of this kind of engagement, which is really kind of a throwback to the early days of radio and then call in. And now we have so many tools available to enable live streaming and multiple participation, sharing and chats and all that. So there's really no reason to succumb to the inadequacies of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the big three, right? There's so many ways, and I'm not talking about alternatives to the same, right? So Parler, Minds, there are several others. I mean, I still have my Flickr account. I still use email. There are the old ways and there's the new ways, but there are so many ways. And so this is my jumping back into, hey, let's have discussions about real things and not snipe on comments. I just today made a comment on someone's Facebook post, and I said, oh, the wording. Anyway, he said, oh, well, I had to make it colorful so that people would see it. So yeah, it's all about attention and grabbing the attention, and the algorithm decides what you see and all that. So these are all standard arguments. You've all heard them before. So getting back to more direct, more conscientious engagement, discussions, and like I said, topic arcs, like a character arc, right? So you watch a movie, you would like to see something develop from beginning to end. I've been the victim of the YouTube recommended autoplay, which somehow always ends up on someone called Mahler, who is not at all pleased with how Star Trek, the final trilogy, turned out. So character arc is the big thing in any movie review, and there's no shortage of movie reviewers on YouTube. Anyway, so topic arcs. I would love to, for example, have a discussion about what do people think and how are they engaging with those thoughts on better ways to have social media. I have an idea. I call it Friend Venn, as in Venn diagrams. And I also have another idea called Munibits. So Friend Venn is about people. Munibits is about communities. Why are they separate? Well, because they are. Because you can have friends that are not a part of a community, and you can have communities that are not made up of friends, right? So they're two separate things. One is aimed more at how people share things and how you consume. So you share and you are shared with. And then the other is more about how I discover things around me, and that could be anything from a missing pet to a local restaurant to who has been tested for the local pandemic, who has the flu, who got food poisoning. It could be anything. These are not necessarily friends, but they are people in a geographical or non-geographical community, common interests or common issues. So those are two ideas, for example. So these, I hope, will be ongoing discussions. And I would most definitely wish to engage with others to have a real discussion about their views on things. It doesn't have to be my projects. It could be theirs. It could be others. So similarly, I am right now I'm probably coming up on 2 months later than I really wanted to, although there's really no rush. These are pandemic times. The time and the clock and the calendar, these are all less and less concrete notions anymore. But Worky is my hackable smart desk idea. I've been talking about it forever. The time is now. Who isn't sitting at a desk or standing at a desk in my case, and hopefully yours, either as a homeschooling student, distance learning, or maybe you are in your workplace, which is now your home, and vice versa. Maybe you are in a hot desk. Maybe your workplace is cycling. We have some people in today, and you're on Tuesdays and whatnot. And so flexible workspaces, flexible work geographies, people are going to be working more remote in the future if the news is true. So we have usually some sort of a thing on which we work, a desk, a table, a countertop, something. Soon, we will all be using these things more in a more directed fashion. Like I want to accomplish my video call, or I need to assemble something for a class I'm taking that involves handwork, right? Maybe it's computer hardware, or maybe you have a soldering iron and a silicone work mat, or maybe it's something artistic. Maybe it's cooking. Maybe you're doing your work in your kitchen. Maybe you're doing it in, maybe it's photography and you've converted your bathroom to a dark room or something. Who knows? Do they have dark rooms anymore? I hope so. The good old days. So starting with the hackable smart desk, which my joke has always been, smart desk, it goes up and down. But in my view, and especially as I mentioned earlier, my experience with the Maker Innovator Group while I was at Intel Corporation, which I am no longer. I'll get to that some, probably many times also in the future. The idea is people that are using these workspaces, yes, your desk goes up and down, and that's great. Now there's a wireless QI, what do they call it, key, or however they pronounce that. Yeah, you can rest your phone on the corner of the desk here, and there's LEDs. So some of these features are interesting, but it's like, how do we make a smart desk smart? Oh, it goes up and down. So my view of it is there are people using their work surfaces and workspaces. They have ideas. We should enable that. And the analogy I've used is anybody who keeps track of any kind of making, any hackathon, the world of hacking and making, Maker Faire, the Maker Ethos, all that. Agriculture is becoming a thing. So automated farm robots. And the big thing is agricultural sensors, right? So these are sensors that are weatherproofed, and maybe they communicate over a one wire, or maybe they're using LoRaWAN, Sigfox, maybe Wi-Fi, maybe 5G. Maybe they're talking to a drone. So maybe the robot is on the ground and there's a drone overhead and there's cameras and there are sensors and moisture and temperature. You can go crazy, and you can automate agriculture in a reasonably priced and super high technology way that will enable more food production in places where they are otherwise a little bit short. You can check water conditions. You can check for, and that extends eventually to health. You may want to find out if some water running off from somewhere upstream has E. coli in it, right? So if you had biosensors that could measure your groundwater, you can head off an E. coli breakout that maybe originates in some, your leafy green vegetables that are sitting in it, and someone consumes it down the road, or down the road in time, and people get sick. So smart agriculture, absolutely a thing. It's growing. So the way I put it most recently was, if you imagine the way that sensor technologies and some of the hardware and some of the focus has gone vertical in the farming and agricultural space, but in the home or work from home space, we have the desk that goes up and down, and we have LED lighting, and we have voice controlled smart speakers, and we have cell phones. So we have all these different parts. And so the idea, and this is an open source project, by the way, the idea is to enable and encourage, this is my little trope, enable and encourage ideation, innovation, and implementation. So I think that's generally true across the entire maker space, and the entire hackathon notion is to make all those things happen in a weekend and to bring together the energy and all that. So I would like to foment that and turn some of the things people are learning by being forced to turn a kitchen table or a kitchen countertop or a garage workbench or a regular old standing desk. Maybe it's from IKEA and it doesn't go up and down, or maybe it does with a crank, or maybe there's a motor, or maybe you've spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars on a motorized standing desk that has different memories for different people. And there's all kinds of ways people are fiddling with that. But to me, that is only the beginning of the beginning. And so the Worky project is something I'm actually pretty excited about. It's also a re-entry into the hardware side of things, because there will almost certainly be a nice combination of software, connected software, right? Cloud and cell phone and Bluetooth and cloud services, all that entire notion, video, audio, streaming, remote meetings, hardware. So some of that is the video cameras and the Raspberry Pis that have stereo cameras, and the where do you get a webcam nowadays, right? That isn't hundreds of dollars. That's actually worthwhile. So some of it will be hardware, sensor technologies, interconnect. Is everything going to be Bluetooth, or is the SPI bus or I2C, are those still useful? Probably. And then there's the classic furniture, right? Make a desk that works for someone. Make a countertop in a kitchen that works. Make a bathroom layout that works. And some of this stuff from the Smart House project at I want to say Georgia Tech. Smart House, HAUS. I'll dig up that link somewhere. I think they moved to Dubai. Anyway, Smart House. So they were working on some kitchen and bathroom technology ideas. Smart desk, smart kitchen, smart bathroom, smart area. So wherever you're trying to accomplish work, and work could be education, could be your young or older child at home, homeschooling, could be the teacher trying to teach a classroom that isn't in the same room. So there's all these things that are happening now that make this idea that I've been bouncing around for the last 3 years or so that much more interesting, and the power of open source and the ideation that can come from that, to me, is very exciting. So Worky project, and I intend to have a probably more video-oriented show, channel, whatever, there, so that we can do things like, hey, what are you working on? Oh, I have this, well, first of all, I have an ADA compliant or at least aware smart desk that can help people that don't have the traditional office chair, or they can't stand in a normal, quote unquote, normal way. That's a particular interest to me, and that will come around, that will come up more when we eventually talk about the Casa Nunzia project, which I will leave as a teaser for now. But if you imagine the exciting field of spatial computing coupled with awareness of special needs and the developing technologies that are the smart home and IoT, put all that together and shake it around a little bit and see what comes out of that. And so I have a particular set of ideas that I've talked to a few people about. That will come up more. So there's those projects. And then, of course, everyone will hear about food trucks at some point, or what I now generally refer to as mobile vending. There's an entire, in my view, economic science behind mobile vending, where obviously location. That's been heard and said many times. The beauty, if you will, of mobile vending is the location. There are two of those that can change. So the the location where you are today is fine, but the location of the vendor can change, and the location of the customer can change, right? So where do I want to move my business today, and where is it going to be tomorrow? And strangely, here in Las Vegas, there's a company called Kitchen Podular, and I met with the CEO. I can't remember. I think he reached out to me, and he just wanted to have lunch, and we did. And very interesting character. It turns out we know a lot of the same people from Silicon Valley. I believe he either grew up or worked or both in the East Bay. So I mean, who knows if we crossed paths back in the good old days. We're about the same age. So, by the way, I was in Silicon Valley from 1993 until 2001, and then I went back in 2005 to 2013. Something like that. That'll probably come up more, surely. My Silicon Valley experiences. Anyway, so Michael Mannion, and I have discussed this. He's bent on the ghost kitchen, which is obviously a thing. I mean, it's becoming more and more recognized a thing, certainly. But ghost kitchens are becoming a thing, especially in the world of food delivery. And where do you place a kitchen for optimal delivery radii? Well, in his view, you put them wherever the demand is, and you can move them to where the demand will be, and so on. So my view, the ghost kitchen is a great idea. It extends the reach of we'll call it a restaurant concept, focused on restaurants, right? So food delivery from ghost kitchens, non-food deliveries from Amazon, Walmart, others, obviously mostly Amazon for everybody. So little by little, fixed location retail, whether it's goods or food. So that's like a service, right? So basically the things that will remain are grocery stores, neighborhood grocery stores, especially the bodega style, or community grocery stores, probably, if they could be price competitive, would be a win nowadays. In my case, I sold my car, by the way, a couple of years ago. That will come up too. I walk about 1 kilometer to the nearest grocery store. I grab a couple days worth of supplies, walk home. So that's completely functional for me. As the lockdowns will occur again, or at least the need to be more proactive about self-quarantining, just in case, I've built up a little stockpile of some foods and some paper products, as everyone has. But anyway, so local grocery. There's also farmers markets, so you could get some locally sourced produce in that mode. Ghost kitchen, grocery store, Amazon, or other mail order delivery of items. So that means fixed point retail will essentially suffer a little bit. There is at least a different type of competition. But then what happens when I don't want to go to the grocery store and I don't want to have the same, maybe there's 10 possibilities of ghost kitchen menus that are within a delivery radius of where I am, home, work, wherever. My neighborhood wants to have some sort of a thing. Oh, let's do a farmer's market. Okay, let's do that every week. So it just gets people out and about and talking to each other and socializing. Well, what are you going to do at the farmer's market? You're going to have farmers, but as always, an opportunity for mobile vendors in general. So they could be selling their own goods, possibly services, right? Hey, maybe it's a mobile vendor barbershop. Maybe it's well, anyway, there's a whole list of possibilities there. So food trucks, food carts, food tents, and then non-food carts, non-food tents. Any of these possibilities can move. They can bring what I call portable variety to any locale and enable social activation, right? People coming out, being sociable. And you can do that on a smaller scale, and they come to you. So now parking is not so much, we all have to go to where the First Friday or the festival or the Great American Foodie Fest here, for example. It's very big. How many people can we pack into a big giant parking lot and overcharge the vendors and take money for just enabling the very same thing that can happen, a short walk from your door, if mobile vendors can operate in over the entire expanse of a community, of a county. So anyway, that will come up. I have an entire set of things ongoing for a few years in that space. Mobile commerce, mobile consumer, where do they meet? How do you best choose pairings, all that? So that will come up, and if possible, I'll have some people in that business to discuss their views of things. I have some software tools. That will come up, I promise. And so let's see, I've mentioned Worky, Casa Nunzia, all things food truck, this podcast. I have Munibits and FriendVen. I think Munibits is probably an entire set of possibilities, really. I mean, the entire notion there is to enable discoverability of things going on in a locality. So, the free paper idea, right? But the free paper idea is kind of going by the wayside too, especially the print versions. So I kind of view that as a nextdoor.com response. I don't really care for nextdoor.com. So anyway, and no shortage of projects there. So these will come up on my side of the microphone. My hope is to have discussions with people about what they're working on or problems they see in the world and proposed solutions. And then maybe that will kind of plant some seeds for other discussions to discuss other solutions, right? So the big one now, for obvious reasons, is the state of the economy, especially here in America, but maybe where you are as well. Stimulus checks? Nah. Money for business? Sure. The one that will get a lot of attention as I'm speaking right now, December 9th, 2020, is the veto-proof defense bill that Congress will send to President Trump. He has threatened to veto it if there isn't a provision to basically disable Twitter. That's his main one. And social media from taking advantage of Section 230 to publish and not be, or to be platforms and not publishers or whatever. That's another discussion again. But the interesting thing for the general public is, they're going to have a veto-proof defense bill to fund that, whatever's in that bill, but getting some stimulus to people who are at the end of 2020 going to face catastrophic financial failure, whether they are evicted from a home that they owe thousands of dollars of back rent on, whether they're the lack of sufficient unemployment funds for a sufficient amount of time will ultimately cause problems. Combination of the two, other issues, not to mention the fact that with our hospitals filling up, there's a possibility of medical problems that are not COVID related directly. So there's a whole bunch of things happening. So while the defense bill is passing, presumably the human bill, the stimulus programs, the CARES, the HEROES, all this, those become so politicized. And again, I don't want to get into the politics per se, but the way that the process works or doesn't is something that is already coming up. Talking heads and whatnot. Along those lines, economics, big thing lately. I'm a fan of Mark Blythe, Professor Mark Blythe from Brown University. He has a lot of interesting presentations about his views, which are very sensible to me. I recently read The Deficit Myth by Dr. Stephanie Kelton. There's all kinds of talk now about modern monetary theory, which is, I'd rather not restate it, because what ends up happening is people restate and simplify, and before you know it, you're talking about something that isn't quite what the other person was talking about, and their view and somebody else's view and all that. Hopefully, though, in the future, we can talk about what the results of modern monetary theory might be. So you can talk about what the theory is and what somebody else thinks it is and what the good, the bad, the pros, the cons. What I'm more interested in is whether it's food trucks or mobile vending or whether it's people living their lives in dire straits with lockdowns and forced closures and business failures and all that. How does this stuff really work? And I think the problem that often occurs is regulators or economists or people in government view everything through a macro lens. Not everything, but I think there's something to be said for taking the microeconomic view of how certain things work. And so what I mean in that case as many people I'm sure remember, and there's even a podcast that he's has ongoing, Yang Speaks. Andrew Yang, when he was running for president, was pushing a freedom dividend that would pay for a universal basic income of $1,000 a month. So what does that really mean? And why does it have to be a freedom dividend? You know, modern monetary theorists would say that the government could inject capital all day, not worry about, through a jobs guarantee program. There's all kinds of stuff that I've been sort of pondering, and I think what gets lost is there's a focus on the macro scale of that pursuit. And while Andrew was talking about giving money to individual people, the private sector loop and the impact that it has on the individual if it were to be implemented, I think is sort of hand waved away. So I think this will be a topic of discussion as well. So I think one topic arc of several could very well be economics of our times. How does this play in other countries and between countries, and those with and without monetary sovereignty, and good times. So I've actually had a set of articles on Medium that I'm sure nobody has read because my stats show as much. I call it Thinking Out Loud About UBI. And then I have a variety of musings. I was thinking about credit availability, most recently job guarantee versus income guarantee, things like that. So ultimately, the ponderings should turn into, well, how would this actually work? Because what is missing when people talk about it is the model. And any modeling you see tends to be very macroeconomic and very incomplete. And in my view, a little bit hand-wavy. So, and of course, there's the argument made by economists that, oh, you are not an economist, therefore don't bother me, right? Personally, I think that's that's another version of a macroeconomic view, right? Well, wait, this will impact me. And something I noticed after reading The Deficit Myth was, I never really drew this line through the dots, so to speak. But you'll see a meme or two on Facebook or elsewhere about how I pay an income tax and a sales tax and unemployment tax. You know, they list off a whole bunch of taxes. Or then another one will be, there is no such thing as government money. It's all tax money. So the problem with the MMT argument, in my view, one of them, is that they will say people will ultimately disagree with this because they view the economy of the United States, for example, which has its own monetary sovereignty. So it's the reserve currency of the world, which is like a bonus point on that score. But they liken it to a household budget, and so people don't understand how you can spend more than you have. Oh, but you don't get to make your own money, but I do. As the Fed, federal government gets to make money, like create it, print it, inject it into the economy. Normal people cannot. So what is kind of left in the gray area is when the person day to day is thinking about paying taxes and where that tax money goes, if they only look outside their door into their community, your city, county, and state taxes are going for state, county, and city programs. I reverse the order there as you hear that. So every day that someone raises the point about taxes and conflates a federal tax and a non-federal tax and where that money goes and how budgets work, they are confusing the entire discussion. And unless that's addressed and unless one could watch where the money goes, then it's hard to actually even have a discussion that doesn't end up with, oh, that's not how things work. Right? So that's another time. There are so many arcs that we can cover. It's hard to even pack them all into one show, which, how long are we going here? We've been going on for a while. I think we're coming up on an hour. Is that right? So what I would like to kind of wind up on is the plan for the show. So you've kind of heard me rambling a bit on a variety of topics and projects. Ultimately, as I discussed at the beginning there, Radio Sunnyvale was a show about discussions. It was about engaging with people in our community. In that case, the community was the city of Sunnyvale. And the shows were about local business. Doing business in Sunnyvale was an interesting one. We had discussions with city council when there was the election coming up. That's how we launched the whole thing. Was we were the only local media, and we were the only ones who actually interviewed each of the candidates. I think there were 6 candidates for 3 seats at the time, if I remember correctly. There was no local media, so we sat down with each candidate. They trusted us to, treat the discussions fairly. We launched all of the segments at the same time, so we tried not to prefer anyone. We worked with the Chamber of Commerce of Sunnyvale to, with the venue and the sponsorship and whatnot. It worked out really well. So my goal with this show is to talk to other people if they are willing. I'm sure that won't happen right out the gate, but hopefully not too far down the road. Have actual discussions about problems and solutions, failure analysis. How can we take something that is bothersome, troubling, or worse, and address it? Like what are you working on? What am I working on? What are other people working on? What's the state of what's happening? Is it going up or down? Good, bad? And these are the kinds of discussions that I hope will lead to not only more discussion, but motivate forward progress. Everything I've talked about today on my side of the things I'm working on, like I said, the calendar and the clock and the time, the way time moves now is a little warped with the state of the world. But some of these things I should already have been finished with, or they should be further along. And so that's frustrating to me. So by talking with to myself or with others and sharing ideas, and just like if you go to the gym or if you're working on anything, having someone or others to cheer you on, to motivate, to point out, hey, that could be done better. That's a bad idea. That's a good idea. And vice versa. And to involve discussion from people who are actually interested, hopefully prevent people who are vitriolic or pick your favorite words. There's really no place for negativity. So while I believe I'm marking this show as explicit, mostly because of the intro, frank discussion, probably venting now and then. This is aimed at mature people who want to discuss such things and not be insulting, not be negative, not be, all those things. So the list of things I wanted to talk about today is much longer. I don't really have a script. I like to kind of freeform. So this first show will end up being something around 1 hour. I thank you for listening. There will be more shows. I'm going to guess that my first, show number 1 will cover the downtown project, just because it's kind of been brought to the fore with the news of Tony Hsieh, and get it off, or I can kick off with something that has always been interesting to me since I moved here to Las Vegas, and which will no doubt get attention. That's not why I'm going to do it, but it is something now that is sort of topical and is on my mind. But there will be shows, like I said, about the various things I'm working on, and there will be other shows that are more tightly coupled to those things. So this is sort of a freeform, vanity show, I suppose. But again, I really want to have other people participate in discussions about, things they're working on, things I'm working on, things that should be worked on, problems, solutions, and we can go from there. And again, possibly video. There's no reason not to, but certainly audio is a little bit easier, less equipment to set up. And I would really like to do live chatting. So The social side of things, the typical tools, only because it's sort of expected. Uh, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, others are how you reach people, but it's not where I would like to engage people, if that makes sense. So what I would like to ultimately have is some sort of maybe Discord, maybe other variety of open source, Jitsi for video open source. There's something called Zulip, which is sort of, it's probably more like Slack, a Discord server, something that leans a little bit away from the problem I have with some social media now is it mixes everything together so that, people that are conducting business, my food truck friends, they mix their business, like, hey, come and find us at this, whatever location Thursday. And by the way, here are my politics, and here's what I think about this guy. So they're kind of, it becomes kind of uncomfortable to me. So I like to sort of sequester off a little section and see what kinds of discussions can be had on these topic arcs, problem arcs, challenges, solutions, however you want to describe it. But how can we develop things and discuss them along the way? So, yes, we're right around 1 hour now, so I thank you for listening, and the website and all the associated stuff will hopefully be up and available to you on which to participate or with which to participate. By the time you reach this part of the show, right at the end, if not, circle back around, check it out. Everything is always a work in progress, always under construction, as the web is. So, thank you very much for listening. I appreciate and will appreciate your participation, whether it's listening or speaking. Have a good one. Hey there, thanks for listening today. My first show back on the air. So I re-listened to it, and first of all, thanks again, Dan Gunn, for the tunes. Although I would love to have other contributors so I can get you some free exposure, as the saying goes. Dan Polcrano was the purveyor of news in the Bay Area, and I think it was the Sunnyvale Sun. But anyway, the Mercury News, I think, bought everything, or anyway, Dan Polcrano. So maybe I'll invite him to talk about local media. That would be interesting. See how far both of us have come. But more importantly, I cannot allow this to pass without comment. Mahler did not care for the final trilogy of Star Wars, and I said Star Trek, but I want to say for the record, I most definitely do not have any difficulty determining which of those is which. I'm a fan of both, and I think, as most people do, prefer the old originals, the original Star Trek series, the first trilogy. I saw it in 1977 when I was about 6, almost 7 years old. So anyway, I had to point that out. I almost was going to edit the show, but I would rather avoid edits. So this is a little after word. In the future, I hope to have people comment, and you may assault me with your feedback at that time. Anyway, I just wanted to sort that out. I actually enjoy Mahler, and I enjoy a lot of the YouTube video critics. I've learned quite a bit in all directions. Anyway, Dan Polcrano, Star Wars, not Star Trek. Have a nice day. Please listen again. See you next time.